I'm sliding down the roll and I'm just like, I am just a trash mom. I am trash at this. And I heard a voice. I heard God say to me, you're not a trash mom, but you can be.
I just went down, but I didn't know, right? I was still operating on everything. And it wasn't until like a year later where a woman said to me, I could tell you were definitely dealing with like postpartum something.
Is every moment those human beings are walking the earth after you have delivered them.
What is
Yes.
maternal wellness and what causes a woman or a mother not to be well once they give birth?
There are so many hormonal changes that are happening. There are physical changes that are happening. There are primitive mental changes that are happening. You don't have to start judging yourself because you're having these negative thoughts about motherhood. It's not supposed to be the end all be all.
Today's verse of the day comes from Psalm 34, verse 18. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted. He saves the contrite in spirit. So we're about to get into the content, and this is really going to be good. But before we do, I have one favor to ask and one favor only. Please like this podcast. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Please share with your social media audience, with your family, with your people. Share. Thank you, and I really appreciate it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Busy Moms Get It Done podcast, a place where we encourage moms to follow their dreams and their motherly instinct. I am your host, Esther Shittu. I am joined today by Jessica C. Vann, a maternal wellness advocate, speaker, and the creator of the TRASH, TRASH approach. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
So I usually ask my guests, like, what is their motherhood journey like? So before we get into like what you do and your approach, I want to ask, like, what did you think about motherhood? What was the expectation? What was the reality?
Wow. So expectation and reality have been so far on opposite ends of the spectrum, but it's been a beautiful journey. I've always wanted to be a mom. When I met my husband, I told him, he asked me, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I just want to be a wife and a mother. I think that's the most important thing anybody can do. And we had kind of a whirlwind relationship. Our son was not planned, but he was such a beautiful surprise, and a mirror for some of the blind spots in my life that I just didn't see. Some of the things that I was like, oh, that's actually not a healthy thing, or that's something I should look at differently. So my journey started with a beautiful surprise, and then we had our daughter 6 years later, who was like probably overly planned. So we went through some fertility issues, which highlighted for me that it's not as easy to get pregnant as a lot of people thought, and as I thought, having a child who wasn't planned and then having a child that I had to beg, pray, and do all the supplements for was completely different. I think the expectation for me really was to be a Stepford wife. I really wanted to be that picture perfect aesthetic. I guess now the Instagram, TikTok mom, but I had to realize that I wasn't. I wasn't. And I had to really grieve that and figure out who I was as a mom. And I'm still doing that every day. And the journey has just been amazing.
I love that because a lot of the things you say I relate to. I also wanted to be a mom, but then I also recognize that there's some things you need to work on with that first child. So I love it. I love everything. And you have a total of four or how many kids?
Oh, no, no, no. I have two.
Okay.
I have the two. It feels like
Just
four sometimes. I have the two, and I have a dog. So I am also a dog mom. I understand that now as well. But I think the thing is, nobody tells you that being a parent is on the job training. It is a job that you don't realize that you're not ready for until you have it. And we have to make room for mistakes, and we have to make room for grace in that space. So yeah, it's trial and error. I tell my kids all the time, I am making this up as I go along. So I don't have the answers, but we will figure it out together.
no, I agree. A lot of times it's not until we grow up till we like, oh, our parents were just, they were just moving right along as well. So you are a licensed professional counselor.
Yes.
Have you always wanted to be a LPC? And then how did you enter into that field?
I did not. No, ma'am. So like I said, my husband asked me, "What do you want to do?" And I'd actually been rejected from grad school to go into higher education. I was working as a residence director, which was my favorite job because it was like I never had to leave college. I could just stay in that college realm, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm going into school for higher education. My undergraduate degree, I actually went to become an athletic trainer. And then I witnessed someone break their leg, and I was like, oh, that's not for me. That's not what I want to do. And I went into broadcast journalism. I believe firmly in being a truth teller, and I got to exercise a lot of that in the jobs that I did, but I never actually went into broadcast. And so, after this heartbreak of being rejected from grad school, my husband was like, well, why don't you become a therapist? Like, that's kind of what you do anyway. And all my friends were like, yeah, girl, like you give really good advice. I don't listen to it. I don't take my own advice. But I apparently, do very well with giving people different perspectives. I try not to give advice to clients, of course, because I don't want to be responsible if it doesn't work. But I say, maybe we should look at these different perspectives. And so, with everyone's encouragement, I said, all right, well, maybe I'll go to school for therapy. And I got into grad school for that. And it again has been this magical mystery ride. But it wasn't something that I always wanted to do. Interestingly enough, I lost my father when I was 7. My father passed away, and in 2018, I was cleaning out the attic, and I actually found that he was in school to become a therapist. And we work off of the DSM, and he was in version 3, and here I was in grad school off version 5. So it was just kind of meant to be something that I got to finish out for him.
No, I love that. I do want to ask real quick because
Yeah.
I think mental health wasn't something that became like as it wasn't in the forefront now as it was before. So how do you think that field has changed from like when you started to where it is now?
I think it was just becoming popular when I went into grad school. We were just starting to hear like celebrities talk about
Mm.
mental well-being and focusing on your mental health. But there was still a lot of stigma, especially in the Black and Brown communities, because we were mostly raised to like what happens in our house stays in our house. Like we don't need outside opinions, and that comes systemically because there's a lot of fear of letting outside people into your home. So we were in this great middle point when I graduated in 2017. We were in this place where I think people understood it was best to go out and get a therapist and really learn how to work through things, identifying our problems, identifying what our traumas and triggers are. Now we have swung completely to the other side of the spectrum where everyone's a therapist, right? Which no shade, okay? Coaches have their place in the ecosystem, but I think people need to be more discerning about who they are listening to and where they're getting their messages about mental health. Because even as a licensed professional, I can be wrong. Um, but I am also held to a different standard. So when I am wrong, you can take me to a board, and a board can pop me on the hand and say, hey, here's where we need to, correct. And here are the courses you need to take to do that. But when you go to coaches and you go to TikTok, you go to Instagram, no one is holding them accountable. Oh, and you go to Chat GPT because a lot of people are doing that too. A lot of people are doing that now too. There's no guardrails. So we're in a place where hopefully we swing back to that medium. But it is more celebrated now. We celebrate our differences now, and people understand diagnoses in a way where we can have different conversations about it now. Um, for better for worse, I think we have opened up a great conversation on mental health in this space.
So, you've worked in different life counseling positions,
Hmm.
and then in 2019 you founded your company Envision More Counseling and Coaching. What led you to find the company? Why was it important for you to like focus on moms, especially?
Yeah, so I always knew when I got into therapy that I wanted to be a sex and relationship therapist.
Okay.
Mainly because again, there is a stigma about talking about mental wellness, but also in our communities, there's a stigma about talking about sex outside of a diagnostic perspective, talking about it for the sake of pleasure. And when I founded Envision, I was actually working with severely mentally ill in dual diagnoses. So we're talking about schizophrenia and addiction issues. And I saw a lot of black and brown people who carried the same diagnoses for 20 years. Now, for those of you who don't know, you should be being reassessed every 90 days to see like have you gotten any better? Has there been any change? And I just didn't believe that they were looking at our communities in a way that they should have been. I believe that they were pathologizing issues that were more spiritual and cultural. Like, as a black woman, I talk to my grandmother every day. My grandmother's deceased. But that doesn't mean that I have schizophrenia. That doesn't mean I'm seeing her, but people weren't really digging into the issues like why are you seeing your brother every day, why are you talking to your brother all day and he's been deceased, like what are the cultural implications. And so I just knew that I wanted to do therapy different. I needed to do therapy different for my well-being. I am not the like how does that make you feel therapist. I am the girl, let's talk about it. What's going on, like, what's the real. So I just knew I wanted to do it differently. So I started with sex and relationships. And what I realized is I was getting moms who were so disconnected from their bodies after having babies that they were having sex out of obligation. Well, my husband wants it, so I'm going to do it, right? I don't have any pleasure, but I don't have time for pleasure. I don't have time for self care. They were really putting themselves on the back burner. They had forgotten who they were or never investigated who they were. They were falling out of love with their body. And as a mom of two, I can tell you, I've been there too. So I really wanted to just work in a different space where we could like one talk about sex like the weather and two really reconnect people to their body and their spirits. And because it was moms that were finding me, I was like this is my audience, this is where I need to go. Sometimes we aren't we aren't thinking about a certain path, but we get called into that path. And so I felt like it was a calling to start to talk to moms, especially because after my daughter, my second child, I suffered severe postpartum depression and anxiety. And as a mental health therapist, I knew what it was, but I couldn't get the help to get the language around what it was. I knew why I was disconnected, but I didn't have the language around that. And so I taught myself the language and decided to teach other moms the language so that they were able to get back into their bodies and enjoy their sexual experiences again.
I find it interesting that you didn't really like market yourself as like a mom therapist, but a lot of moms were drawn to you. Why do you
Yeah.
think that is? And also, I feel like I have to ask because I felt like,
Yeah.
especially after I have three children, so after my second, I felt like I just went down, but I didn't know, right? I was still operating on everything.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until like a year later where a woman said to me, I could tell you were definitely dealing with like postpartum something, but it's just like I didn't know. So how would someone know or figure out like, this is postpartum depression or anxiety and stuff like that?
Yes. So thank you so much for sharing that because more moms need to hear that experience. And I think it is very much that feeling of like something is not right. So the medical field considers that 6 week period after you give birth to be the postpartum experience, right? And so when you go into that appointment 6 weeks after, it's like 72 days or something, they should be giving you something that's called an Edinburgh screener. And so basically the postpartum screener. So basically it will tell you if you've experienced these certain things, there's a high chance, a high likelihood that you're experiencing postpartum depression or anxiety. They don't really differentiate the two. But that's it. They put it in a folder. They don't tell you what it means.
Yeah.
They don't give you any resources. That's it. So when you start to not feel like yourself and you're noticing I'm run down or I don't want to be around the baby, I don't enjoy the baby, I'm not sleeping well, tell someone. Tell your partner, tell your friends, have the conversation. And I wish that mom that said to you, or that person who said to you, like, I could tell you were going through that. I wish they would have said, girl, have you thought about this? Or could you possibly be dealing with this? Because at least then you would have had the wherewithal to say, okay, maybe I should talk to my doctor. Talk to your doctor. Ask about, possibly seeing a therapist or going on medications. And I say seeing a therapist first because not everyone needs medication. And doctors are very quick to just be like, oh, you're sad. Here's some Lexapro. Have a great day. But sometimes you just need to say the quiet part out loud. And for me, I didn't think my daughter liked me. I was sick the whole pregnancy. I was throwing up until the moment I actually gave birth to her. She had an attitude when she was born, like, just eyes rolling already, right? So I just didn't think, I was like, she's not connected to me and I'm not connected to her. And I'm afraid all the time. And I knew, just again as a therapist, but I needed someone to like allow me to say that. When I would tell my mom, I'm just sad all the time. She's like, oh, it's just the baby blues. You're okay. The baby blues is in that first 2 week period or so, but postpartum sticks around. And the truth is, we can diagnose you with postpartum depression up until like 3 years after your child's birth. But the truth is, postpartum is every moment those human beings are walking the earth. After you have delivered them, it is that whole time. So some of us will hold on to that. If you recognize those things, look for a maternal health advocate in your area. Reach out to me. If you guys are listening to this, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions and seek support. Because the first thing is mothers think, well, I should be enjoying this. I should be connected. I should feel happy. And we're just like, well, I just need to be thankful. And I'll just push it down. Do not push it down because that's how moms lose their lives and that's how babies lose their lives. So just tell someone and then we'll get you to the right place.
I will say another thing as you were speaking, I'm thinking sometimes, and I think that's what happened with me is like sometimes you're like, well, it's of course it's supposed to be hard, you know? I'm dealing with all of these things. Like why there shouldn't be a break, but it will get better. It
Yeah.
will get better. One of the reasons I was drawn to you was the idea of maternal wellness. So what is maternal
Yes.
wellness and what causes a woman or a mother not to be well once they give birth?
So there, I'll answer that question backwards. What causes a woman not to be well after giving birth is a mystery. There are so many hormonal changes that are happening. There are physical changes that are happening. There are primitive mental changes that are happening, right? Because our brains are outdated computers. It has two jobs, to keep us alive and to keep us away from things that will kill us, right? So your brain can sometimes perceive this tiny human as a threat because especially if you have another child, because it's like, oh no, 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 I remember when we had those crying nights. Those nights didn't feel good. Your brain doesn't know that those crying nights are just uncomfortable. Your brain's like, nope, that could kill us. So it's sometimes kind of targeting, but we don't know necessarily what causes you to be unwell. We first need to get women to a state of knowing their own wellness, their emotional, physical, mental, their social and their social and just spiritual well-being first, so that they know when something is off. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of times we don't know ourselves. And so what wellness is an embodiment of all of those things, and being able to check in with the levels of those things. Are you going out? Are you taking time to yourself? Are you having conversations with those you love? Or are you isolating and thinking, well, this should be hard? It should be hard because it's different. And usually we will trick ourselves out of getting help because we're just like, well, this is how it should be. So, as far as what causes unwell, we don't know, but we need to focus on what looks like well for us so we know when we're trending in that direction. Hopefully, I answered that question.
No, I definitely think you did. You have a method that you have termed the trash, which I love that name, TRASH approach. What is that method and approach? Why do you think a mom is so susceptible to societal pressures from society?
Oh man. So trash it's so funny how trash came about. Like, we decided to co-sleep with my daughter, and 4 months into co-sleeping, we had had enough. Like, she's crying, I'm crying, my husband's like, something's got to change. So I hadn't really paid any attention to her nursery because she was sleeping with us. And I took the co-sleeper, I put it in this empty nursery, I put the baby in the co-sleeper, and I left the room. And I shut the door. She's crying and screaming. I am crying as I'm sliding down the wall. And I'm just like, I am just a trash mom. I am trash at this. And I heard a voice. I heard God say to me, you're not a trash mom, but you can be. You can become thoughtful, rested, accountable, secure, and happy. And I'm like, what? How? Like, how am I supposed to be that? And what I realize is, in our society, anytime a mom takes time for herself, she's a trash parent. Oh my gosh, this is the third vacation she's going on. She's staying in a hotel. But the opposite of that is, anytime you see a dad with a kid, he's amazing. Anytime you see a dad with a kid, it's like, oh my God, look at you. You're a good dad. Daddy daycare. Oh, but we don't get any of that. We get the criticism. And I wanted to kind of turn that trash perspective on its head and say, yes, she is trash. She is thoughtful. She knows that she needs to be rested in order to be a good mom. She's taken accountability for her behavior. She is secure in her role. She's identified how she wants to show up as a mom, and she does that, and she is happy. So hell yeah, because that trickles down to our babies. Our children do not need perfect parents. They need present and progressing parents, parents who are trying. And so I think the reason we've always been so susceptible to that is because of the moms who came before us. I remember telling my mom, I just need a break. And her being like, girl, I never needed a break. When I was with you, I would do that. My mom was a army officer. You did need a break. I do remember my grandmother watching me. I do remember your village, but the village has been eroded. And so we don't have the same supports. And so moms are hearing this from our elder moms, and they feel bad. They feel like trash, but they need to know that trash does not have to be a bad thing. If they remember those 5 characteristics and they apply them so that they're able to be more present, I think they can turn things around.
I love that. We parents do not need like children do not need perfection. They need progressive and trying parents. I think that a lot of the times there is this idea that you have to be perfect, and it does go
Mhm.
back to what we spoke about earlier, where it's like as soon as we become parents, we're technically like we're becoming. It's like on the job training, as you say. So, what is one thing that you believe society gets wrong about motherhood that leads to so much overwhelm for mothers?
They believe that this is a selfless role, that the most selfless thing you can do is be a mother. And the truth of the matter is, it doesn't need to be selfless. It needs to be what I call self full. And self full is that middle ground between selfless and selfish. So, in order to be selfish, we have to act without regard to anyone else. I encourage my clients to be self-full and to think, how is this going to impact the people in my house? If I take another weekend where I do a staycation, how is it going to impact everybody? Well, maybe my husband is going to need support. Maybe my kids have something to do. And so maybe you make accommodations for those things before you take your staycation, and then you go and you do your thing, because mama has to be taken care of as well. And sometimes it looks like I acknowledge these things, but there's nothing I can do about it other than to point it out to my husband. Hey, this one's got this going on. This one's got this going on. Let me know if you need help, but I need a break. And it's about opening a dialogue. But society really thinks that moms should put their kids above themselves. And I just do not subscribe to that. I believe that this gonna rock some boats, but I believe I come first, then my relationship, and then my children. The reason being is I can't take care of anyone else unless I've taken care of myself. My relationship is a model for my children of how they should be treated, how they should treat others, how they should show up in the world. And then I take care of their individual needs. And I treat my kids differently. I do not treat my daughter the same way I treat my son. Why? Because they have different needs. They are different human beings. So a lot of these things that just seem to make sense to me are things that people gasp and clutch their pearls about. And I want to be perfectly clear. I have lost clients over my mindset about parenthood because I've said, Mom, you should really take care of yourself first. And they're like, no, that's not the way you do things. And I'm like, well, how can you take care of your children if you're depleted? And then they don't show up again. And I wish them the best of luck. But up in here, we gonna take care of ourselves and we're gonna allow that to trickle down.
I was just about to ask, like, what kind of clients you usually have, and like,
Mhm.
what is their mental state when they come to you? Are they completely like on the edge, at the tipping point, or like thinking, "Oh, I need help as soon as possible"?
It definitely varies. So I no longer see severely mentally ill clients. Just in private practice, you just don't have the structure for that. But
Hmm.
I would say the general thread is they're burned out. A lot of them are just like not suicidal, but they have what I call escape thoughts. They are like, if I got in a car accident today and I could spend 2 weeks in the hospital, everything would be okay. And it's like, do you see how scary that is? Like, do you hear yourself? Because what you're telling me is I need a break. I need to be able to relax without somebody calling me 20 times, or I need, so how do we find that bit of respite in, in a safe way, in a way that doesn't require you leaving your family for 2 weeks? Because I've even asked, if you left your family for 2 weeks, how would you feel? And they'd be like, I'd be worried about what were they eating? Is the living room clean? So no, you don't need that, because that's not going to be restful at all. And we have this narrative of pouring from an empty cup. I'm not a biblical scholar by any stretch of the imagination, but the Bible says, my cup runneth over. People have to benefit from your overflow. It's not about being a cup and twisting yourself. It's about building that overflow. So my clients are burnt out and over it by the point that they reach out to me. And slowly we build their overflow. Slowly I teach them how to have the conversations about leading with thoughtfulness, which means starting with yourself. What do I need so that I can address everyone else? And then getting those other four characteristics of the trash model so that they can show up for other people.
Um, so you mentioned at the beginning that obviously what you thought mother would be is different from what it became.
Yes.
And I, like I said, I had the same thing. I still wouldn't change like being a mom for the world, but what would your advice be to like, moms or women who are seeking motherhood and trying to figure out, is this something for me?
I would say get comfortable with the unknown, get comfortable
Mm,
with the unexpected, because I would venture to say I don't know a single mom that is the mom they thought they would be, right? And you have to allow yourself to grieve that, and then allow yourself to celebrate the mom that you are. I am very much, I thought I would be like a maybe a little closer knit mom, but I'm very much like a free range mom. Um, Go out, make mistakes, and then let's talk about the mistakes that you've made. And thank goodness they're 12 and 6, so they're not huge mistakes just yet. So I hope we can stay on hope we can stay on that path. But life is meant to be lived, and I didn't want to feel like I was restricting my kids from
Mm-hmm.
actually living that life. I am the We might not have a gourmet dinner, but we're gonna have dinner every night at the table. It
Mm-hmm.
might just be chicken nuggets and fries, but it's gonna we're gonna bond and talk over that, and um yeah, just be okay with the unexpected and the unknown.
So I went through some of your videos, and one of the
Yes.
things that you mentioned was like motherhood cannot check all the boxes, right? And I think that especially at the beginning where there seems to be like a disconnect between who am I without,
Yeah.
when I have this person and who am I before, and you kind of like are in that in between of like I want to be the person I was before, but I also need to be this person. How can you explain that and expand on like how you came to that realization, and how can moms realize like it cannot check all the boxes but also be okay with that, because sometimes you're like I'm grieving the fact that I'm not, like you mentioned, the mom that I want to be.
Remember, one, that grief is not linear, right? Like there are the however many stages, I forgot, of grief, but you kind of circle through those. Like you might get to acceptance and then come back around. And I think it's important to know, for me, there are a lot of things I thought motherhood would fix. I'm not a morning person. I'm not like the get up and go person. But I thought once I became a mom, I'm going to have to naturally get up early in the morning. I'm going to have to naturally be the get up and go and explore. And I'm just, I'm just not. And motherhood is not the thing that makes me happy all the time. It is not, um, it did not fix all of life's problems, right? Like some people just think once I become a mother, happiness check, this check, that check. And it just didn't for me. Um, I am happy as a mother, but I'm not happy all day, every day. I didn't do summer camp this year. I didn't do summer camp this year, y'all. They home, okay? They in the house. So it's just like I don't want to be around them all day, every day, but that doesn't make me a bad mom, right? Just recognizing that you don't have to start judging yourself because you're having these negative thoughts about motherhood. It's not supposed to be the end all be all. And again, once you realize that, you start looking for things that can check the boxes. Like maybe I'm into pottery, and maybe that's what I need to be doing in my free time. Maybe I need to go out and take voice lessons. Don't stop being intellectually curious about yourself. The thing is, like when we were in college, and I feel comfortable speaking for everybody, but this may not fit everybody. We were like, college was a time for self exploration, and that was when we got our permission slip to do that. Then we became adults and we had kids, and it was like, I can't find out who I am anymore because now my whole world has to be about these kids. No, that's crazy because you're learning so much about yourself as you mother. As you show up in this role, you still get to learn about you because you know what? Your kids are curious about you. Your kids want to know about you, and they don't just want to know about what you've done for them. So continue to be intellectually curious about yourself and find other things that will check your box. You can't make your kids the end all be all, because if you do your job correctly, right? And barring any health issues for your children, if you do that, they should grow up and leave you. You want to make sure that you have something when they leave. That's why I tell couples, make sure you still like each other. Because when they leave and y'all looking at each other like, Okay, well, this has been nice. Like, what do you do? Right? So find the other things that will check the boxes for you.
I love that. You're writing a book.
Yes.
Congratulations. It's called Whole on Purpose. Can you describe the process and how did the book come about? You mentioned, I think that like this has been a long time coming and the third iteration of this. So, what are you hoping readers gain from the book?
If your listeners have not realized now that I am just a chaotic mess, right? Like,
No, you're not.
you know what though? But I wear that with a badge of honor because I'm not afraid to say it, right?
Mm.
Instagram, TikTok, people are showing you their highlight reels. They want you to think that their lives are perfect. I'm telling you, it's a hot mess over here. When I started writing a book, so I never thought I would write a book because I almost wrote one because I was like, oh, well, that's what you do as a therapist, right? You see clients, you get experience, you write a book. And then I was like, I don't want to do that. Then when the book finally came to me, because I was so excited about the trash approach, I was like, I have to put down practical ways to use this. And it just was not coming together. It didn't feel authentic. It felt very wordy, very textbooky. And I'm like, I'm not that person. I don't even believe in experts. I just believe in people who like they have enough experience in their field where they're credible. But I tell my clients, you're the expert of your life. I just happen to have gone to school and learned some things so I can help you. So I sat that to the side. Then I started writing about ways that I use the trash approach in therapy. And I'm like, people don't care about that unless they're a therapist. So, Whole on Purpose, it's Whole on Purpose, a joyful rebellion against the myth of good. This is about how do I apply the trash approach in my day-to-day life? How do I get to show up as a wife, a mother, a friend, a daughter, wholly in every part of my life? Because what happens is we all are very fragmented. When you're mothering, you're like, well, I don't need to be a therapist. I don't need to be a daughter. Yeah, you do. Because I need to show my daughter that I understand. I've been in the same position as you, right? You're not always going to agree with me just because I'm mom. And I've done that as a daughter. And as a therapist, I try not to therapize my kids, but I do let them know, hey, I know a little bit that can help you to deal with these really big emotions. I don't have to segment myself. Even as a wife, I can show up as a mother. My husband will tell you there are times where I am mothering and nurturing to him because I see that that's what he needs. I don't have to turn off motherhood to be a wife and a partner. So, Whole on Purpose is about showing up in every aspect of your life as all of your roles embodied and knowing very securely and very firmly who you are instead of having to pick an identity in different places. And it's a joyful rebellion against the myth of good because good and bad, right and wrong, these are gray concepts, right? Like what I think is good, you may not. What I say is morally, ethically right, you may not. There are some societal threads that are common, but as we can see in the world that we live in today, even some of the things that society thinks are is good, it's not. It doesn't work for our own life. So this is a challenge. It's a love letter to all women who feel like they are fragmented and they're trying to pull it together. These are for all women who have been like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. It is it's a love letter saying it's okay. It's okay. Just continue to be curious and we gonna be all right. So I'm really excited about it. I finally paid my editor and sent it off because girl, it was about to die on the vine because I was like, maybe not. But I went and got it off. I'm super excited. I cannot wait to share it.
When is it coming out?
Woo! So that's a very good question. In my head, it'll be in my head, it'll be mid-November because
Okay.
it's holiday time. People are gonna have some downtime. It's gonna be a
Mm-hmm.
good gift, a nice little stocking stuffer. The way that I read it, and of course I'm biased, but it's like a hey girl. I got some of my clients to say, like, can you just read through it for me and let me know? And one of my clients was like, this is therapy. This is like the way you talk to me in sessions, like make it make sense. Like, what is we doing? It's like that. And so it's gonna be, I think, a quick but impactful read, and one that people will continue to go back to when they need reference. So
So
mid-November,
we
you know.
mid-November.
Yes.
So make sure you check out the book. Can you say the title again? I think I didn't get the whole
It
title.
is Whole on Purpose, a joyful rebellion against the myth of good.
Nice. So we are ending, nearing the end, and this has been so good, and I feel like my own little personal therapy. But I'm gonna ask you one of the questions that I usually ask to round
Yeah.
up. And I guess one is like, what sacrifice did you make with motherhood or your career for both to exist? And what sacrifice do you see other women making it?
So that's a hard question. What sacrifice? I think, oh my gosh. Okay. I think that the sacrifice I made really was my career for a little bit. So when I went to school, my son was 2, and I was working for the Department of Social Services. And I remember my baby looking up at me and being like, "Can I be one of your foster kids? Because you spend so much time with them." And that broke me. That he saw at that age that I was spending so much time in that field and with those children. And so I had to take a step back to spend more time with him. And so we would do school work, and he would be on my back when I was doing work, or he'd have his little laptop and, um, playing school. But I think that was the sacrifice I made for being a mother. But it doesn't feel like a sacrifice because it changed the trajectory of, where I am. And as far as my work, I've been so fortunate where I haven't had to make many sacrifices to be where I am right now in private practice, to work for myself, because it was something my husband and I talked about and something he really encouraged me to do. And I have no problem saying no to work to be present for my family. So I am more willing to get rid of the work for the family than the family for the work. So I think I see a lot of moms who are sacrificing their identity for either motherhood or work. And I have to say, it ain't worth it. Because at the end of the day, you deserve to know you and have an intimate relationship with yourself. So don't give it up, girl. You are far more important than the work piece, and your children deserve you to know who you are.
Well, Jessica, this has been such a lovely. I love it. Thank you so much. I
Thank
really appreciate
you.
you coming on the podcast and everything you touched on maternal health, the trash method, and also like just how, the hierarchy. And I think sometimes we as women, we just forget that hierarchy of like, where do I fit? And it
Yeah.
should always be like me before the kids. So thank you so much. Where can people find you?
So you can find me on Instagram at envision_more. Let me double check because I don't be knowing like that. So yes, that is it. Envision, and it's IN Vision_more. And on TikTok, girl, somebody stole my whole TikTok, y'all. I had a had a TikTok with about 1,500 followers, and somehow
Oh no.
they stole it. But you can find Jess Me on Purpose. So JESS on wait, JESS Me on Purpose on TikTok. So I'm more active on Instagram because I'm an old millennial and I can not get with all the other things. But find me on Instagram, y'all.
Well, thank you so much. To the listeners and the audience, feel free to share, like, subscribe, all the good things with this episode, and we will see you next week on Busy Moms Get It Done.
Thank you.